We bought an illusion of inclusion. We bought the idea that we were going to all be equally welcomed in to balance the playing field. Everyone would have an equal opportunity to advance, to have, liberty and justice for all. We really bought that. And it has never been true. Because this notion of meritocracy, that you are basically the sum of what your efforts have been, that is really if you just had more merit, if you just, pulled yourself up from them bootstraps, again, that's the myth. That's a myth. From the moment Black people were freed in this country, we were terrorized. From that very moment.
Welcome to Not All Hood. Dr.Joy DeGruy. If you've heard her speak or read anything she's written, you are enlightened. She's an internationally renowned author, researcher, and educator, and her groundbreaking work on post-traumatic slave syndrome opened the eyes of so many to the lasting impact of historical trauma. Change will happen, she says, by pouring into young people. Now, whenever she sits down with anyone, it's a healing circle. She always sheds light on those truths so many try to deny. Join the conversation.
What is the key to not fall into despair and hopelessness?
Oh, yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting you asked me that because I do interviews all over the world. When I was in the Netherlands, that question was asked me. No one has ever asked me that. That was the first time anyone said, well, the actual question she asked was, why do you have hope? Why do you have hope? And I had never had, it's like I'm prepared for pretty much anything.
Right.
So it was something that I responded to immediately. And I said, I am the hope. You and I are the evidence of hope.
But given what you just laid out, how does that manifest?
So here's what the key to everything is: coming together. The answer is going to be unity. It's going to be coming together, because it is the divisiveness that is destroying the world, not just our world, but divisiveness. Human beings are 99.99% the same. There is one humanity. And when you could get pit people against each other, which is the game, I got to be a little bit better than you, right? And we know anti-Blackness is a standard, right? Mm-hmm. At least I'm not Black, right? And I'm saying, I'm sorry you're not Black. I mean, that's my perspective, given who I believe my people are and who I am. So I believe that part of what we have to do is we have to bring people together. When people know better, they can do better. I know that clinically as a clinician. I know that as an educator. I know that when people know better, they do better. When I left the little shop with the ladies that were talking about the snow, she hugged me and said, please come back. Because I wasn't speaking between the ears. I was speaking heart to heart. And I was telling her, we've got to reach out to those young ones. We've got to engage them in this process. And, I was on a podcast, what's it called? The Vault.
Okay.
Recently. And I remember, and I was telling them about me wanting to always work with youth. Because I go to audience and folks, they're the who's who, and they're the, the folks, some of the folks that what Randall Robinson would say, came to do good, but stayed to do well. And that's what happens to leadership. Came to do good, but stayed to do well. I'm going to get mine. And we have I'm going to get mine kind of mentality. And so when I travel to different places and people will, ask me to speak, I said, please get me an audience that has young people, 11th, 12th graders. So I was in Memphis. And I said, look, I want to talk, please. I know I'm here 3 days. Give me some time. They found 150. 150, 11th, and 12th grade. It was wonderful. And it gave me kind of half a day to work with them. And of course, I was going to be talking to the larger audience, the adults, about historical trauma, which is heavy. If you go through, it's intense. And I usually am very careful when I'm working with young people because it's pretty hard hitting. I said, but let me tell them a little bit about some things that I know, historical things I knew they didn't know. And so I started off with them. And these are kids that are in programs, kind of to lift kids up that have been struggling or in, families are having difficulty. These are some great kids, brilliant kids. And I said, how many of you have been in a relay race? Right. I just wanted to start on the ground, something they could relate to, right? They raised their hand. I said, what's the most important job of the first leg? They said, get out fast. You want to get out fast. I said, why you want to get out fast? Because you got to get that baton to the next person. I said, what is the worst thing you could do? They said, drop the baton. I said, my generation dropped it. I'm here to put it back in your hands.
Wow.
Because you see, they can't hit the tape. I'm not going to hit the tape. I won't be around to hit the tape. But I know they won't if they don't know there's a race. So it's my responsibility as an elder. It's our responsibility as a community to educate them. These kids were so hyped by the time they were coming, their term was over. And they were coming because the next group was coming in. Listen, we didn't know. I was telling them stuff about, most people don't know, about this country and the contribution of Black people and a variety of things. And one of them I talked about was the Statue of Liberty, but I'm not going to talk about that. But it's a long story about what I learned about that. But
we're so intrigued.
I know, right? Wait a minute.
Right.
Yeah,
you don't even want to open the door a little bit.
Give
me you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses.
It's so fundamentally something that people don't realize about the Statue of Liberty. But anyway, so I'm telling them.
Can you give us something that we can go look up? Have our listeners can.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
What keyword should they chat GPT?
Chains.
Okay.
So let me give you a short, abbreviated thing about that. And then I'll tell you what the young people did that were very exciting.
Okay.
So when I first went to the Statue of Liberty, I only went because a friend of mine, Floyd Myers, brother of Heavy D, lives out in Mount Vernon. He invited me because he got a new job. He was working for the Department of the Interior, and he was over all the national parks in the state of New York. He said, come on, Joy, go to the Statue of Liberty. I'm going to get you a pass. I said, no. He said, why? I said, because it's going to make me mad. I ain't going. So come on, Joy. So we're going back and forth because I knew something about the Statue of Liberty. And it concerned me that no one else knew. So part of what I knew came from when I was in France and I saw the original drawing from the sculptor. And the original drawing showed she had broken chains in her left hand. She had broken chains in her left hand. It was commissioned in 1865. Important, right? End of the Civil War, end of slavery. Pretty important. She's a statue of what?
Liberty.
Yes. So the chains represent the broken chains, the shackles, was the end of enslavement. That's what the liberty we're talking about. So she's no longer holding chains. Matter of fact, she's just holding a rectangular object with a Roman numeral on it because the United States insisted that those chains be removed. But the sculptor insisted too. He said, the chains must remain. And the United States said no. Who won?
We did not.
We did win.
We did win. Wait, we got them all.
We got the chains. The chains are there.
Are they there? Okay, take me to it.
Her feet. Yeah.
Where it is impossible to see them under any circumstances. So this is truth hidden in plain sight. So I feel some kind of way about that, right? So I'm thinking, Floyd just got the job. He just got the job.
Right.
Yeah.
He said, no, go on and bring it. So I brought it to his supervisor. I said, there is nothing in this entire exhibit, and this was in 2007, that shows the change. You show us more than we ever want to know about that statue. You show us how thick it is. You tell us why it turned green, because it was copper and oxidized. You told us who got involved, who was involved, the Eiffel guy. You tell us everything. You show us every part, but you never show her feet. Because you see, once you show those chains and the broken shackles, you have to then explain them. And America said no to that. So I said, I would like to myself pay for a picture. I'll pay someone to come and photograph that and put it on exhibit like everything else. And his boss said no. I said, I'm sure that we could probably find a sculptor, a black sculptor right across this water, black sculptor that could sculpt just that part. He said, no. I said, okay, then I'm going to tell on you. So I travel all over the world telling on them about the chains. And I get a call from the Department of the Interior. And they asked me to come. They fly me in. They apologize. They say, we have been negligent and we want to fix this. And we would like to hire you, Dr. DeGruy, to, just maybe train all of our rangers, which I did. And then, of course, I came a second time and they had indeed had a picture up there and everything was great. And I said, okay. Then I came a third time.
Okay.
Undercover.
Oh, okay.
Third time I went undercover because I wanted to see if someone was going to tell me about the chains unasked. Right. So on the tour, you get assigned some arbitrary, ranger. So the ranger, he's talked about the chains. He said, this is my history, your history. It's American history, a white man, and I'm proud to tell a story. So I'm thinking, job well done. Put a period on that. That was like 2013.
Yeah.
2019, Washington Post writes a story. The Statue of Liberty was created to celebrate the end of slavery and not immigrants. Its new museum now recounts. Stay with me. Lady Liberty was created basically for the exact reasons that it's standing there doing what it's doing and their chains are there, and that is to celebrate freedom.
Right.
And specifically the freedom of enslaved people. Now, here's the question. They have a new museum. It wasn't there when I was there. But do you think they didn't always know that?
Right.
Arguably the most recognized symbol in the world. And they lied about it. They lied about it. The whole attachment to immigrants came years later. That was the original intention. Now let's just roll it back. People go to Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island, and you got always those people that go, my great-great. And my great-great, they came through, And Black people look at Statue of Liberty and feel no connection. How much prouder would our young people be? How much taller would they stand knowing that she is standing on the chains that their ancestors had on them in the belly of ships because they didn't come through Ellis Island? How much prouder would they be about those who paid for them to be here? So when you erase the chains, you see, you erase me, you erase us, you erase the truth. And what the reality is, which to me is much more phenomenal, and that is we can walk there and say, no, this statue is mine.
Yeah.
Literally, and be right. We can't have that. So, back to the young people. I told them that story.
Yeah.
Oh my, they were tore up. They were like, what?
Right.
Right. So they're coming around there. They're like, wow, we didn't know that. And what can we do? These 11th and 12th graders. And I said, keep learning, keep supporting each other. All of the things that I could encourage them with. But a week later, the woman who brought me in for that 3-day training, she said, I want to tell you what happened. The boy Rittenhour, the boy who shot the people during, I think, Black
Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
Rittenhouse.
Yes.
That's him, Rittenhouse. I think I deliberately don't know his name.
That's right.
But anyway, he was in the same auditorium I spoke in the next week, and they shut him down. The youth shut him down. They stood up. There was nothing violent. Them and some of the college students just stood up in the audience and said, not here. And he took his whole little entourage and left. When people know better, they do better. And we cannot expect people to educate our children about who they are. There is a disincentive for that. They absolutely don't want them to know. And they now made it a rule that they can't. And the reasoning, and I mean, I'm a social scientist, so the reasoning behind it is, to me, troubling. It's really troubling because they say, well, it's just too upsetting. It's going to upset the children. It's just, It's just too harsh a story. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, my book, and everybody else, I'm in good company, been banned because it's just too disturbing.
Hey, comrades, if you are enjoying the episode, join the conversation. Like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Don't get yourself blocked. Keep it clean. And when Nikki Haley said you don't want Black kids to feel inferior if you teach them
do you think for a moment that Jewish children feel inferior when you talk about their Holocaust?
Not at
Absolutely
all.
not.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. And here's the reality. They really don't. My niece did some research working with white children in Oregon and telling stories about the history. And basically, she would ask them questions afterwards, like, why do you think Thomas Jefferson said, that Black people were not smart and incapable of being creative and artistic? Why do you think he did that? These are sixth grade white kids, upper middle class. They went. One kid just said he's a racist. That was one of the reasons. Another one said, it's easy to objectify people when you see them or believe them to be lesser than you. Another student said, if people believed that Black people were creative and smart, then they probably wouldn't want to enslave them. And that would lose him money and a whole lot of people, enslaved people. These were not children cowering in the corner saying, oh my God, I'm just so upset. Mm-hmm. They're not upset. Mm-hmm. It's that reality that they don't want their children to get to, not the other. And we bought it. We just went, okay, really? Its stories are too terrible? Then don't read the Bible. Come on, the stories in the Bible. Are you serious?
Right.
But it's, again, it's like we become part of the people. What is the quote? It said the people are wrapped in a strange sleep. We begin to believe the emperor has clothes on. And we having conversations about how naked he is.
That's right.
But everybody's saying, well, look at how fine the clothes. And I'm looking around going, is it just me? Is it just me that notices that the emperor is naked? And for me, I think, at 67, at this age, I'm my goal, and I think we talked about it, is I'm looking for the children. They're the ones that we're passing the baton to. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are going to hit the tape. And they don't know there's a race. So we've got to educate, uplift. And again, I say that when you ask me, what do we do with all the stuff that we know is happening right now? The moment they knew, they stood up. A week later, that little bit that Dr. Joy shared with them was enough for them to feel secure enough, to feel proud enough, to feel able enough to stand up for what's right. And this is not, when I start looking at all the different people all over the world, and you're looking at the globe, our blue marble consists mainly of people of color. Mm-hmm. That's the truth. That's always been the truth. Mm-hmm. Why would you fear that? So unpack it. What is the fear? Because it's fear that's driving all of this. There's another quote that says, in wealth, fear is hidden. And there is a fear of always losing what you have. And what I look at when I see the world and when I see our young people, we have got to convince them, we have got to make them remember who they are, that this planet is comprised of all kinds of people. In fact, if you look in the foreseeable, just let's go 50 years ahead. No matter how far ahead you look, you're going to come up with a shade of brown. Do you hear me? There's no way it's not going to happen.
And that's what
and that's the fear.
Dr. Frances Cress Wesley talked about in the ISIS papers.
Wellsing absolutely did. She taught, and she brought a lot of trouble with that. And that's a fear of annihilation. Hence, you will not replace us. All of that. Yeah. You're going, well, wait a minute. Let's just do the scientific math. Not that people pay attention to what science is saying. Mm-hmm. But what we know scientifically is that human beings are essentially one human race. There is not enough difference, no matter what you look at, hair, features, none of that. None of that is enough to make us not all be part of one human reality, right? That is the truth. So it begs the question, how can you be replaced? Stay with me. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as really replacing. We're all human. So what we're looking at is something extraordinarily superficial. Whiteness, right? Because the only folks that's scared they're going to disappear are white people. Because of the natural mixture that is, you cannot stop. You cannot stop it. Nor was it intended to be stopped. We're human beings. And we're part of a human reality. And what their fear is, no, but I'm better than you. Wait a minute. I stand unique above you. I don't ever want to be you. You know, it was interesting. I did the DNA thing, right? Found out from the Mende tribe, Sierra Leone. And on the other side, Netherlands, which is interesting. And I was, they sent me these paperwork because there are a couple of ones. If you go to African Ancestry, they will really nail it down and take it all the way to your tribe, right? And I did both. I did genebase.com is what I looked it up. And this was really early on. And so they sent me all this information, very technical. I had to call somebody to interpret what they were saying, not my lane. And so I got a little confused. There was an arrow. They show you an arrow. It's a red arrow. And I'm looking at where the arrow is pointing. I'm going, so, and then it points to, I said, so am I from where, I call up, I said, am I from where the arrow started? Or where am I from where it's pointed to? He said, we're all from where it started. He's Chinese. He said, we are all from where that arrow starts.
Wow.
And he says, then believe me, he says, I'm Chinese. Chinese still trying to find another way to be not like nobody. He said, I'm going to be real with you. He said, but Dana don't lie. The DNA don't lie. And when we start looking at the oldest, human remains, they're in Africa. And so strangely enough, they called her Lucy. Let's just unpack that one. Yeah. They called her Lucy because a Beatles song was playing, Lucy in the Sky. And arguably the most important find in human history. And they named her Lucy. And so when you hear Lucy, you figure, well, she's maybe from Boston.
Sure.
Right.
But she was really Dinknesh. That's what the Ethiopian people called her, which means thou art wonderful. But they called her Lucy, and they continue to this day to call her Lucy. Sometimes you'll see Lucy, also known as Dinknesh, instead of Dinknesh, foolishly called Lucy. Yeah. Because again, we cannot have the face of our beginnings be African. But all of this becomes nonsensical from a real biological point, because there is no biological difference in human beings. But if you deem yourself superior, uniquely above everyone else, you see, it's a pathology, then everybody else becomes a threat.
You had mentioned that perhaps the baton wasn't passed you want to pass the baton properly because your generation has failed. What are those failures that you're talking about that one could correct once the baton is passed?
We bought an illusion of inclusion. We bought the idea that we were going to all be equally welcomed in to balance the playing field. Everyone would have an equal opportunity to advance, to have, liberty and justice for all. We really bought that. And it has never been true. Because this notion of meritocracy, that you are basically the sum of what your efforts have been, that is really if you just had more merit, if you just, pulled yourself up from them bootstraps, again, that's the myth. That's a myth. From the moment Black people were freed in this country, we were terrorized from that very moment. And when, stay with me, they told us, get away from us. We don't want you around. They had Jim Crow, segregation, we just don't want you near us. We said, okay. And we went and we built numerous towns. One, famous one in Tulsa. I have pictures of Tulsa, before and after. In the before pictures, we had Black banks, stores, hospitals, schools, There were parades down the everything was Black owned. You go in, everyone, there was love, there was joy. And they went, wait a minute. We wanted y'all to be separate, but we didn't want you to prosper. Mm-hmm. So the first thing they did was they looted, they raped, they burned, and then they literally bombed. I mean, it's insane. And you see before and after, and they say, oh, but don't worry, because we want you to just come on in. Be equal citizens. I ask people everywhere I go, I said, segregation's over, right? They say, yeah. I said, well, is there a hood? Mm. I said, anybody here know what a hood is? Mm. They go, I said, but is there a sign on the freeway that says next right hood? I said, but y'all know where it is, don't you? Mm. And in every major city in the United States. The worst of that is that we get dispersed constantly. You know, gentrification got, differently. Let's go. Slavery, Jim Crow. You had redlining. Mm-hmm. You had urban renewal. And now we have gentrification. It's just new names, mm-hmm. but it's like we're getting ready to displace you again. Right. But when we got displaced each time throughout, our history, we got dispersed together. Now we're not being dispersed together. And there's no recognizable, in certain cities, there's no recognizable Black community. So it used to be dispersed, but together. Now it's just dispersed in food deserts, job deserts, So you have to understand the accumulated impact of that. So what I look at with all of these things, because I have to tell a story, and I never tell this story. I actually never tell the story. It's not even in my book because it's too hard to tell.
We'll keep it between us.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time. My fault. Yeah, I'll never forget this. And I have two sons. My oldest son has ataxic cerebral palsy. Very, he's totally functional. It's not debilitating. It's a mild form of it. And he was going to see his brother, my younger son, to get his ID from him because he had gone to my younger son had an apartment with a friend, and he was going to meet him downtown Portland, which was halfway from where they were, so he could give him his ID. I, at the time, was in New York lecturing. And so my son is downtown. He's got his brother's ID. He steps off the curb about maybe a foot, 12 inches from the crosswalk. He just steps off. Now, this is the absolute truth. He steps off. A police car that was sitting on the corner flies around, boop, puts the little signal on. My son then steps back on the curb. He doesn't even know what he's done wrong. He steps off the curb because earlier police had drawn guns on him, earlier in the year for walking while Black. Traumatized him, had to work him through that whole thing. So he's hyper vigilant because of that, but he steps back on the curb and the police officer says, I'm gonna have to cite you for improper use of a crosswalk. And he says, but I didn't cross. Another police car comes. Now remember the infraction. He stepped off the curb and he stepped back on. While he's talking to that police officer, my other son has now arrived. He sees what's going on with his brother. He attempts to cross the street and the police officer there says, don't move, stop moving. He says, my brother, well, he hasn't done anything. Why are you doing this to my brother? Now the crowd has drawn. All the people, oh, look at the dangerous Black boys. What must they have done, right? My son is terrified. My older son calls me on the phone. I'm 3,000 miles away. And he starts saying, Mom, the police, he's trying to explain what's happening with his brother. I said, is there a policeman near you? He said, yes, he won't let me cross the street. I said, let me speak with the police officer, right? Just let me speak with the police officer. And he goes, you need to speak to my mom. The police officer said, I didn't say that, but So I hear the police officer say, well, I don't have time to talk to your mom. I said, say these words to him. Tell him my name is Dr. Joy. I go through the whole thing. I'm a professor at Portland State University, graduate school of social work. And suddenly I become a different one. So he gets on the phone and he says, well, he was making a big, we'll just give him a warning this time. He said, we'll just give him a warning, But he was, he was fussing, he did all these things. None of that was true. by this time, my son is handcuffed in the back seat of the car. Now, remember the infraction. He stepped on a step. In the middle of that happening, a white couple with a child in a cart, it's
baby carriage. Mm-hmm.
Baby carriage. They crossed the street right in the middle of the street. And my son goes, look at them. And he yells at them, please use the crosswalk. And they continue, we will, officer, and continue across the street. White couple with a baby and So he's feeling some kind of way. Yeah. So now the police officer allows my son to walk across the street to greet and meet his brother. They take my son out of the back seat of the car. They take the handcuffs off of him. He reaches in his pocket to grab the ID, and all the guns come out. And in that moment, of course, now his brother is watching all of this. So this is multiple traumas. Here's a question. You put him in there seconds ago. You patted him down before you put him in there. Where would a gun have come from? Or any weapon. But in that instant, he could have lost his life because he reached in his pocket to get the ID to give to his brother. So then I say to my son, my older son, I said, give the phone to Nadim, give it to your brother. And he tries to give it to him, and he won't. He said, he won't, Mom, he won't take it. I said, tell him he doesn't have to talk to me. I will talk to him. And he put the phone to his head. He wasn't saying anything because now all the white people are looking. It's a huge crowd, right? Everyone's looking at him. And I said, I want you to keep walking. And when you and your brother are 2 blocks away, I want you to let me know when you're 2 blocks away. Just keep walking, son. Keep walking right now. I'm right here with you. And when he got 2 blocks away, he burst into tears. He burst into tears. He said, Mom, they're going to kill me. It doesn't matter that you raised me right. It doesn't matter that I'm a Baha'i or faith. It doesn't matter, Mom. They're going to kill me. Surely they're going to kill me. I was 3,000 miles away. And I said, how dare you, son? How dare you say such a thing? I said, there were people that looked like you that had 100 years of enslavement behind them, and they were looking at nearly 200 years in front of them. How dare you, son, say now you can't do it. Now they're going to, I said, not now. Don't you ever forget on whose shoulders you are standing, son. And the tears dried. He said, oh man, Mom, I'm sorry. I cried for 2 hours after that. 2 hours I cried, 3,000 miles away, trying to save my son. And so for me, when I say that, a large segment of my generation bought the lie, but we put our children in harm's way when we did, because they believed it too. And this that's happening, and this that's coming, they have no clue as to how to deal with this, how to navigate it. Who's going to tell them? Who's going to explain to them why it's happening now? Because you see, if they knew their history, this would not be a surprise to them. But I do know for sure, if my ancestors endured people grabbing your wife out of the bed and maybe your 6-year-old to trade around that night with whoever was there, when they sold, beat, raped, tortured, and killed us for hundreds of years, are you telling me we can't do this? No, there's not a cell in my body that believes that.
So what does the coming together look like?
The coming together, and this is huge. Right at home, first of all, you got folks that don't talk to their sister, their cousin, because of something somebody said, they said.
10 years ago.
10 years ago that the nonsense has to stop. We've got to heal ourselves personally. We've got to begin to interrogate the things we say we believe and how we move through the world. And here's how I set that up. I ask people, do you have a standard? do you have a standard you live by?
Mhm.
And I know you do. I know who you are. You have a standard,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Now, I have a standard I live by. It's a high standard. And I'm going to tell you right now, I fail it frequently. Often. I fail my own standard. I said, but here's the difference. My standard doesn't move because I fail it. If you were to take and look at what we have been socialized to believe about things, we're going to use in the scientific method. We're going to look at evidence-based approaches. We want to look at root cause analysis. We want to look at all these things to determine whether we should operate or move in a particular direction. Let's just take a particular standard, whether people believe it or not. Some people do. Thou shalt not lie. 100% failure. That's a 100% failure rate for that one. Now, do we say, statistically speaking, it's not a good standard? I mean, really. I think we should, the scientists, if you're looking at it from that vantage point, let's do away with it. Because, look, we have a 100% failure rate. Let's just bring lying back in. Do you see? We don't bring lying back in because we failed the standard. We don't engage ourselves in that which is not virtue or righteous or good because we fail it. I continue to reach for it. Maybe when I breathe my last breath, I will have achieved it, maybe not. But my standard does not move. And what we have done as a society, what we've done perhaps even as a world, is we moved the standard to fit our own inaccuracies or inadequacies. And we moved the standard, and we can't do that. We've got to put the standard there and continue to climb for it. And when we look at our children and we talk about the youth and we talk about what we didn't hand them, we gave them a bill of goods. We told them all of the things that we knew weren't true. And I'm saying, look, trust in God, but tie your camel. We cannot send them out on a racially charged battlefield with no armor. And that is what is going on. This is not that deep. People who, my father went to the 6th grade. It's not about being educated in that way. It's about, what is that thing? It's a quote that says, turn thy sight unto thyself that thou mayest find me standing within thee, mighty, powerful, and self-subsisting. We need to look at what is good in us. We have to interrogate our own behavior, right? We have to own it. It's like anything else. You know it. I know it. The divine humbling. Oh, yeah. You know about the divine humbling because whatever you thought, something happened in your life where it happened, help you understand, okay. And then you see a person, because I can tell people who are pre and post humbling. I've met them like that. Pre and post, okay.
Right. They haven't gotten the lesson yet.
You didn't have the lesson, right? So failure or falling is not a problem. But we have to pick folk up. And they got to learn from why did you fall? And maybe if I told you how I felt and how I tell people, don't make me more than I am. I'm not confused about joy. I go to the mirror every day. I'm not confused. People stand up and clap, all that stuff. None of that gets, because I know me. And I know my own frailties and my own limitations. And truly, my husband knows them, But it's being able to understand who you are. Then you make that next stretch to the people you love, right there with you. It's not out in the street. It's right here with that person. My daughter always says, we got to learn how to beam love. Beam love and light. We started doing, are you walking?
That's right.
And a brother across the street, don't even know you, go, hey. You're in the grocery store, hey. Right? All of that. And I always ask people, Black folks, I said, what does it feel like when that happens? It just warms you up, right?
Yeah,
it's a shot in the arm that, I see you.
Yeah.
And Candace, what does it feel like when that doesn't happen?
When it doesn't happen?
Yeah, when you nod and they don't nod back.
You know what? Because we've had the nod conversation before. I feel like, the person that doesn't nod to me, they're not one of us. Like, because there's no way that you can be in a space, and I've talked about this before, being in a space where I hadn't seen white people in a long time. I was in Black people. I was in Saratoga Springs. Wow. And I came across a gentleman, and he was with a white girlfriend or wife, and I gave him the nod, and he did not give it back.
Of course not.
And it made me just feel like you don't understand. And it also made me feel like, wow, because you always look for that nod because it helps me feel comfortable too. Sure. Because I'm looking, if you're running, I'm running too, right? Because if you are running, so that nod means we're on the same page. Mm-hmm. We know when we're in good and we know when we're in trouble. Right. And so it just didn't make me feel like I had a place. I just felt, wow, I couldn't even get the nod from someone who looked like me. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't seen, hair nor hide of a Black person in a few days.
Yeah.
It made me feel like I was a super outsider. Of a place where I already felt like it hurt.
It hurts.
It hurt.
It hurt.
Comrades, if you're enjoying this episode, join the conversation and make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. Nah.
And I think that, and that has happened, right? Or someone will divert their gaze.
Yeah.
They'll divert their gaze. Yeah. And again, I think there is an injury that occurs when we are not living authentically. Mm-hmm. When you can't be too Black now. Mm-hmm. See, that's, oh my God. I taught at the university in Portland for 20 years, and it was intense because I constantly was no affirmation. And the problem with me, because they just thought I was going to be, I wasn't going to be so Black. One day, when I had hair, I used to wear my hair in braids and then I had locks. But when I had my hair in braids, there's the in-between braiding time when you wash your hair, the braiding is
That's right.
But you can't get to the braider for a couple days.
The in-between style.
It's the in-between stuff
That's right.
that you do, right? You pull your hair back. Sometimes people put a little, straighten it a little bit. Just pull it because you're getting ready to get your hair braided.
Mm-hmm. In about a week.
So I go to work that day in between and they go, now that is professional. They suddenly
what
noticed
year
me.
Was that?
This was, it was the 90s.
Okay. Yeah, I know the story.
Early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, they were just really very, it's just so smart on you. Right. So I was a little more radical than I am now. I buzz cut my hair, literally buzz cut it and walked in the next day. So you don't get to determine for me what I'm going to look like. Right. And so it didn't give me a real warm environment to be working in. But I turned out to be too Black. And part of the reason why folks kind of left me alone is because I was all hooked into the community. I'm one of those people. I know one of the professors, a tenure track. No, she was a full tenure professor who got given an F to an African student that was a straight A student. This is a master's program. So it's 2 years. She gave her an F. Now, first thing she said was all the rest of you professors were wrong because everybody else said she was an A student. She was a straight A student, right? She's on a student visa to be there. And she flunks her in the second year, which means she'd have to wait a full year to repeat that course, which she could not do. She came to me. She was my student in practice for a year, this Black student. She was so ashamed. She fell on her knees and hid her face and cried because she had brought such shame, right? And she goes, I don't know why she did this. She accused her of plagiarism, all kind of stuff. Gave her an F and went on sabbatical. Hold it. So this means that this girl has no recourse, but I'm faculty. I know your number. So I called her at home. I got a message. I said, if you do not correct this, if you do not correct what you have done to this student, I will have the entire community in a press conference on your front lawn. She called me 15 minutes later. No, I think there's been some sort of a mistake. No, I'm sure, she got a B. It was a B, which was still lower than any grade she had received. And I asked the student, I said, now here's what my recommendation is. Take the B and then sue her. I said, but that'd be later. Just get out of here. Get this through. But part of that was true. I could call, and I had that amount of connection in the community. Not only the leadership, I had business community, because we were a community that has since been destroyed. But that is what it's about. That is the safety. The safety lies in connection, because what they bank on is that we won't. And, sometimes when I don't get the nod, I'm looking at a person that is, they're living in a different world and they don't want to be in mine. Mm-hmm. They don't want to even seem aligned with mine. They have chosen where they're going to be. I don't know that they feel that way now, but they have chosen that. I ain't mad at you. Do you?
Right.
Go with God. I'm not spending a nickel's worth of time on it. But I do know that we have to be purposeful and intentional about bringing folks together. Grab a young person, beam that love and light into them. Sometimes you see Black kids and they just got a scowl on their face. They're like, and I'm going, give me that smile. I know you want to smile. You want to smile. I see it. Right? Brightens their whole day. And it don't cost you anything. And it's easy. And sometimes they, get yourself over here. Go. That's what they're getting. People barking at them. Right? And we also have to remember one more thing I want to say about young people. And that is, if we look at where we are, 2025, we had an explosion of different things that hit our community, crack being one of them. Michelle Alexander in her book, The New Jim Crow, talks about that and its origins and the proof of its origins. But looking at certain things that have assaulted our community over and over again, that has caused more and more fracturing within the community. We also had something where, when they were frisbeeing condoms at everybody, that was the answer to teen pregnancy. It was just everywhere you went, there was a bowl of candy, a bowl of condoms, everywhere you went, right? And then the HIV, AIDS came into it. All of those things started pushing us into it. But there was a generation that was lost. We have a generation, or maybe two, where there was no mature adult parenting. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
No mature adult is parenting. Case in point, young girl, she had blown out of every alternative school. And she said, Miss Joy, if I get through, if I graduate, will you come to my graduation? Right? Will you come? And I said, if you graduate, I won't care where you are, I'm coming. She was in Brooklyn, Lord. She graduates, I got on a plane. And I flew to Brooklyn, and she couldn't believe I was in the audience. She was so excited. She got up, and it was a small alternative school, and they all had their, diplomas and everything. So she grabbed someone out of the audience, looks like her sister, and she goes, "This is her. This is like my mom. This is like my mom." She's pointing at me. This is like my mom. She was like my mom, and that was her mom, whose hand she was holding. So I'm trying to go. I said, "Well, it's fictive kinship. We're talking. I don't want nobody to feel uncomfortable." And she says to me, "Oh my God, I've heard so much about you. Would you be my mom too?" Wow. Would you be my mom too? Wow. I was not expecting that. Wow. Because she had not been parented, which helps you understand all of the things that are going on in those lives.
Right.
There was not a mature adult. But you see, that didn't matter. I grew up, folks got pregnant. There wasn't no news. But you didn't raise the child. Mama, big mama, cousin, auntie, the women in your family raised that child. But now they made it so, well, if you have the child and you want to get the check, you can't have those people in your home. Yeah.
Those the numbers off.
Definitely can't have a father, but you can't have it because this is only for you. And I'm only adjudicated 16-year-old. And I'm somebody's mama. And I believe that I got it all going on now, without not just a grain of any real parenting skills. So I started to see that. And I said, we've got to show up, because when you got a village, if you live in the village, everybody can correct you. Everybody is part of your life. That's no more. But it doesn't mean we can't facilitate it. It doesn't mean we can't create it. It doesn't mean we can't make it happen. Even if it's in your house, and say, look, I had 52 women at my house. We did a women's gathering. I said, the one thing you got to do is bring a young person so that they can see what an elder is. They can see how important it is between a mother and daughter. I had a mother and daughter come, hadn't even been speaking to each other. They were crying and holding each other before they left, because I created space for it. We've got to create the space for it. And we've got to get the young people, because they're attacking them as young as 4. So we cannot, like I said, I don't expect folks to educate my kids, my grandkids. I show up, first of all. I show up. I will train you for free when I got skin in the game. I'm going to make sure you do no harm here or to any of these kids. But I can't be mad if I don't show up. And a lot of people that don't show up, let me tell you why. Parents that don't show up say, don't have that school calling me. Don't you have that school calling me.
That's right.
But what they're reflecting on is their own experience. They get triggered when they walk in the door because they felt the same way. My teacher doesn't like me. And sometimes that teacher looked just like them. Because, again, I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think that I am. That's how we arrive at our self-concept based on the appraisals of significant others in our lives. So it's a job all of us can do. It's not hard. I didn't have to say anything to the women in the space that I was in before I got here today. But I felt like I needed to talk to the women in that space about something real. Sometimes I'll hear people ear hustling when I'm talking. And I tell them everything that I want them to hear. But it's about us taking responsibility for community, fostering unity, fostering collective. And again, you got folks, I have people in my village from every walk of life, from every race, religion, philosophy, all over the world. They're part of my village. I collect those people in my life and they will always be in my life. And then there's some people that I'm absolutely related to that I'm like, you can't come in because you're not right. I will help you. Right. I will even pray for you, but you don't get to come in and do harm in the village.
Even if we are related.
Even if we are related. But it's about really understanding that I will help you if you want to help you. If not, you can't come in and do harm. Right. We can't have that. So, there's so many layers to this. I would love to be in a space, and I've actually created this. I do symposiums. I have a private nonprofit. I'm going to do a little shameless plug. Be the Healing, Inc. That is my or bethehealing.org. And that is where I do on the ground work. And I get folks together. I do panels with young people. I want to hear what they're thinking, what they're feeling, because our children aren't saying. They're not, and half the time we're not asking them, So we need to ask them. We need to check in with them. And even when they're not ours, we got to show them we care.
What have you learned from them?
Man, well, one of the things that I had asked a panel, I was actually talking to a panel of young, and it was a 10th grader through 12th grade. And I asked them, what is it you want to say to your parents? I asked them that. Whoa, parents were in the audience. Oh. Parents were in the audience. I want them to ask me how I feel. They tell me what they want. They tell me what I should do. They tell me, but they never ask, how do you feel? And if they ask me how I feel, I would tell them that I'm scared. I would tell them that I have a lot of friends that I talk to that don't even want to live. I have so many friends with anxiety that come to school that literally get high, not to get high and hang, but so that they can calm their nerves enough to attend. That's how much these were the things that came out from these kids. They're not bad kids, but they're struggling. But no one ever asks us how we feel. And I was blown away. It was a moment. It kind of blew open the door to me and to the folks that work in my organization, that we really do need to ask those important questions, particularly of boys. Particularly of boys. They're very reticent to say those things. I am afraid. It is not okay to be afraid or sad. Everybody gets to have the full spectrum of emotion. And when we rob them of that, we harm them.
When you talk about hope in young people, I think about as much as horrible as social media can be. Yeah, I think about there are good things about social media. Absolutely. I think about young people who didn't have voices. Like, for example, I think about those sixth graders in Oregon, right? And their awareness. And it makes me think about, back in, 40s, 50s, 60s, white kids, even before then, white kids, children of Klan members who didn't necessarily buy into that philosophy, but they didn't have a voice.
That's right.
So if they disagreed, they still had to keep their mouths shut. And I think about social media, and I think about how all these kids are not just exposed to what other kids are going through, but they have a voice.
That's right.
And their voices are very loud.
Yeah.
And, so sometimes we forget about that.
True.
Like there is that good, because you see that there are young people who get it.
Absolutely.
And there are young people who care.
They absolutely do. And that was the other thing that showed up, was that, like I said, the group of kids, I was with them 50 minutes and they were ready to just tell me what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Right. They were ready to go. They just, when they know better, they can do better. And I think you're absolutely right. There are plenty of them that are there. I think we need to pay attention to something that, in my research, I discovered that we don't do enough of. And this is literal touch. Literally touch.
We talked about that earlier today.
Right?
Yes.
And feeling that the love, right? Now that's something, we didn't even know each other, but we're embracing, right?
Right.
We've normalized that. But there are literally young people that are never touched, and particularly young boys that have just never been touched. And they were talking about that. There was some research done on how to manage. Matter of fact, Howard Stevenson actually, I think, did this research where they showed two boys. They were on a basketball. They were and they were all the same age. It was like a 13-year-old camp or something, 12-year-old camp. And you know how some of them have had the growth spurt and some of them haven't, right? But they're all the same age, but one dunks on the other one. And now everybody going, whoa, man, he dunked on you. These are all 12-year-olds. And he gets mad and he goes over there and he starts pushing the other guy, the other kid. He's going, why are you pushing me, right? So now he's just pushing him. And he's in it. The refs come in, blow the whistles. They pull him apart. And the boy, he's humiliated. So he's pulling away. No. He said that in his research, he could never reduce anger. He looked at it. He said, but he could reduce aggression. And what he learned that reduced aggression was touch. And he showed it in this little boy who was he goes, nah, and one of the refs had it, was in a bear hug. He goes, I ain't gonna let you go. I'm not gonna let you go. You can be mad, but I'm not gonna let you go. And he melted in his arms. He just melted in his arms. That embrace melted that little boy. So touch, just human touch.
For someone who is looking at this, listening to this now, what would you say it's incumbent upon them to do in the face of, I'll just say everything. We don't have to but just in the face of everything, for everything that is just, as you said before, hidden in plain view. We saw what was going on. We got the 300 plus pages. What does each person's responsibility look like?
I think all of us have a lane. I have a lane. If people say, well, what is Dr. Joy's lane? It's pretty straightforward, pretty clear. And I tell everyone, you have a lane. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing in your life, it means that we reach out beyond ourselves to uplift people, because it's a burden. Some are afraid, some don't know what to do. And I'm telling you, right now with the fires in California, whole Black community, Latinx communities, gone, right? I said, to them, the calamity of calamities has already happened. And so for some of us that are struggling, and some of us are, it doesn't matter, because everybody pulled together. Whether their house burned to the ground or not, they pulled together. And each of them started to talk about what it felt like to have perfect strangers, care, right? So we have to dare to step out enough to say, listen, this too shall pass. We have been through and experienced far worse. We will make it through this as well. And that hope is us. We are the hope of our ancestors. We are the realization of hope. And that hope reflects itself in not forgetting who you are, but also being able to see who everyone else is and to realize that there's a space for everyone. And that means that on a practical level, you don't have to be in front of a mic. You could just be walking down the street. And that is, I think, the responsibility and the role. And the other thing is, like I said, we've got to trust in God, but tie the camel. We got to be pragmatic about what's going on. And we've got to be pragmatic about moving forward and moving together. Moving together.
Not all hood.